high in the spine of South America, where the air grows thin and the wind never rests. A small seed has fed mountain people for thousands of years. Long before the rise of empires, before the conquistadors and their ships, the peoples of the Andes turned to a plant that could survive where almost nothing else would grow. They called it quinoa, the mother grain, and they treated it as sacred. For at least 5,000 years, this humble crop has been cultivated across the high plateaus of what is now Bolivia, Peru, and Ecuador, in soils too poor and at altitudes too brutal for wheat or maize. Yet quinoa is not truly a grain at all. It is the seed of a flowering plant, a relative of spinach and beets, and that botanical quirk is part of what makes it so remarkable. While true cereals falter in the cold, dry heights, quinoa thrives, drinking little water and shrugging off frost that would kill a field of corn. To the Inca, it was second only to the potato. Each year, the emperor himself would plant the first seeds with a golden tool, a gesture that bound the survival of a people to the survival of a single small plant. Growing quinoa is an act of patience. Farmers sow the tiny seeds into thin mountain soil as the rains return, and within days the seedlings push upward, unfurling broad green leaves that soon blush with deep reds, purples, and golds. As the plant matures, it sends up tall stalks crowned with dense clusters of seed, swaying in colors so vivid that a ripening field can look as though it is on fire. The harvest comes by hand, as it has for millennia. Workers cut the stalks, gather them into sheaves, and lay them out to dry under the cold Andean sun. Then comes the threshing, beating the dried plants to free the seeds, and the winnowing, tossing them into the wind so the lighter chaff blows away and the heavy grain falls back to the cloth below. Each seed is coated in a bitter compound called saponin, a natural defense that protects the plant from birds and insects. Before it can be eaten, the grain must be washed and rubbed until that bitterness is gone, a final labor before the food reaches the pot. For the people of the high Andes, quinoa was more than nourishment. It was woven into ritual and belief, offered to the earth and the mountains, brewed into drink and ground into flour. When the Spanish arrived in the 16th century, they saw this sacred crop as an obstacle to conquest. They tore up quinoa fields, banned its ceremonies, and forced the planting of European wheat and barley in its place. For centuries, the mother grain retreated into the highlands, kept alive by indigenous farmers who refused to let it vanish, passing seeds and knowledge quietly from one generation to the next. The plant that empires could not erase endured in the very places that were hardest to reach. Then, in the closing decades of the 20th century, the world began to remember. Scientists studying global nutrition discovered what Andean mothers had always known. Quinoa is a complete protein, carrying all of the essential building blocks the human body cannot make on its own, rich in iron, fiber, and minerals. Word spread and demand exploded. By the early 2000s, quinoa had become a global phenomenon, appearing on supermarket shelves from New York to Tokyo. In the year 2013, the United Nations declared an International Year of Quinoa, honoring a crop it called a potential ally against world hunger. But the boom carried a shadow. As prices soared, some of the farmers who had guarded the grain for generations could no longer afford to eat it themselves. A food born of poverty and altitude had become a luxury of the wealthy world. Today, quinoa stands at a crossroads. It is studied as a crop that might feed a warming, crowded planet, able to grow in salty soil and harsh climates where other foods fail. And it remains, still, the patient seed of the mountains, carried down from the roof of the world by the hands of people who never forgot its worth.